Hello everyone, welcome back. So I'm going to be doing a reading today on Three Eye Atlas. Just in general, I'm curious about how it's affecting the energy of the solar system in general, right? So it's moving through the astrological clock, and as it does that, it's going to be aspecting against every other body in the solar system, right? So it's going to go conjunct, square, trine, this, that, the third with everything. And one interesting thing about Three Eye Atlas is that it's moving retrograde through the solar system, right? So it entered in Sagittarius, it's supposed to exit through Leo, and it's moving backwards on the clock as it does this whole thing, right? And retrogrades in general, to me, talk about reboots. And what's so interesting is that I have my cards out on the table already. I did an algorithm spread because that spread that I work with corresponds to all of the different celestial bodies, so the planets and the zodiac, yada yada. And three of the four aces came out on the table in the spread, which is interesting, right? So the brand new energy, reboot, upgrade kind of energy. The only ace that didn't come out on the table is the Ace of Pentacles, which I think is interesting, right? So it's like the Ace of Pentacles is the one tangible ace, right? That's the thing that I would usually correspond to either the new earth or a new timeline or anything like that. And so I went through my deck just to see where it was in the deck. And it's deep, deep in the spread here between the Two of Wands and the Ten of Wands, right? So what's interesting is that, let me just pull these out on the table here. The Ten of Wands is always kind of like my elevator pitch energy. It's like I always think of this as somebody that's bringing something to market, as if they're about to go on that TV show Shark Tank, and they're bringing an idea into the room, right? Something that they've worked on for a while. But the elevator pitch energy is about refining the idea, right? Where it's like they say, if you happen to be in an elevator for 10 seconds with the person that can make your dream possible, how would you condense your idea into a pitch, right? Something like that. And the Two of Wands is the person that's receiving the pitch, right? Which is this Ace of Pentacles, right? But wands in general are thought forms, right? So when I'm plugging that into the spread, one thing I'm seeing as an overall theme is that it's basically like the energy of Three Eye Atlas as it's moving through the solar system is effectively encouraging us to refine our vision of what the Ace of Pentacles or the new earth or the new timeline looks like, right? Where it's like clarifying the idea and all of that. Because again, like the Two of Wands is usually, for myself, I see it as the card that comes right after the King of Pentacles, where like the King of Pentacles is the apex of the manifestation in the deck, where you've taken something as far as it can go, and now you're looking for that next thing, right? So I'll compare it to James Cameron in Titanic, where the Ace of Wands would have been the idea to make the film in general, and then the King of Pentacles would be Oscar night, where you win every single Oscar, right? The apex of the manifestation. But now you can't make Titanic 2, right? So how do you follow it up, right? You're looking for that next thing. So that's like the energy of the Two of Wands for me, is like the quote unquote director that's looking for the next script or concept or idea to work with. So I guess I'll just take that as like an overall energy for this spread, right? The actual energy at the bottom of the deck, which talks to me about how spirit itself is involved in all of this, right? Like how the hand of God is moving through the situation, is coming through as the sun, right? And I don't know, I mean, quite frankly, it's giving solar deity energy, right? Where it's like, I guess Christianity is technically like a solar worship kind of situation, but you've had your Apollos, you've had your Mithrases, you've had your Zoroasters, your Ahura Mazdas, all of that kind of stuff. Your Horuses, right? Where it's like there's this solar rebirth kind of energy, and it reminds me of the end of the first Matrix trilogy, right, where it's like Neo fuses with the sun and reboots the Matrix. And of course, within the context of that story, the Matrix thinks that it tricked him, but he actually wound up winning, right? But it's like the sun itself is what's rebooted, and therefore it's like the rest of the simulation becomes, you know, lollipops and marshmallows, at least for that final scene of the movie, right? And I always associate the sun with like, I don't know, if we're inside of a simulation, right? It's like that is the projector that is projecting the movie that we're watching onto the walls, right? It's like that's the thing that's projecting onto the walls of Plato's cave, right? But the projection itself, I guess, is being rebooted. It's interesting too with sun card energy that I think one of the most significant things that happened with 3i Atlas is that when, like the moment it went behind the sun is when that Amazon crash happened, where all of those different websites and merchant processors and things like that went offline for a couple of hours. And, it doesn't really seem like anything changed as a result of that. But then again, do we really know what happened? I don't know. I don't know what was happening, but in general, it just reminds me of one of those moments where you have to upload new software onto your computer and it requires the hard reboot, right? I don't know if that's still a thing, but at least back in the day, remember, it was like you would download the new Windows and you had to fully turn off your computer and then turn it back on, right? So it's like the moment that 3i Atlas went behind the sun, something like that seemed to have happened. And whatever sector of energetic reality it was rebooting would correspond to Amazon and the things that it shut off, right? As above, so below. So at least I know in my world, none of the merchant processors were working that day. Like credit card machines were not working. The banks themselves were fine, but like, I don't know, it was something like that, right? So it would have something to do with like a transactional kind of energy. I don't know, we're gonna come back to it. I will say if anybody's interested in a private reading, come through before 3i Atlas comes and scoops me up and takes me back to the mothership, God willing. But readings are open, so I will see you there. But let's jump in. So at the foundation of the reading, which corresponds to the planet Saturn and how it might be influencing things related to Saturn, at least that's how I'm looking at this spread. I'm asking, how is it affecting the energy of each planet or celestial intelligence, and then how would that affect us, right? So with Saturn, we have the first ace on the table, which is the Ace of Wands. And what's so fascinating to me about this is the fact that Saturn to me corresponds to innovation. And what I mean by that is that everything, all of the technological wonders of the modern age have always been possible, right? This is not some sort of magic trick. It's always been possible. Electricity and Wi-Fi and those things, right? But we had to get there as a society, right? We had to build on different foundational layers. So you can call it the Stone Age, Bronze Age, Copper Age, whatever, right? And building on top of that. But I think it has something to do with evolution and readiness, right? I'm almost thinking of it in terms of Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, right? How it's like the monolith seemed to trigger these evolutionary jumps, right? And the monolith seemed to have very Saturnian energy around it. And Saturn, to me, exclusively corresponds to the laws of physics. That's why I'm saying innovation and things like that. It's like anything is possible as long as it corresponds to the laws of physics, at least here within this matrix, right? It's like anything is happening, anything can happen, excuse me. It just has to abide by the laws of physics so that it can be properly rendered, right? It's like I don't really need to know how it happens, right? But it's like the idea of something just like manifesting and visualizing in front of me is very unlikely, but I can turn around and go like this and it can be there, right? Because physically it can be there. It just can't pop in front of me. You know what I'm saying? Either which way, Ace of Wands in that position. That tells me that there is an evolutionary jump happening in terms of technology or whatever like the next thing is, right? Which almost makes me think that like maybe something like this passed through in the Industrial Revolution or during any other kind of quantum leap in human history. And I know all of history is the victor's lie, right? It is what it is, but for all intents and purposes, let's just pretend that maybe they were telling the truth for a second. That there's some sort of evolutionary jump that has to do with Saturn and the laws of physics and like readiness, right? Where it's like okay, you've mastered this level of chemistry, you understand this level of engineering. Now we can move on to the next one. Now we can move on to the next one because it also has to do with consciousness and the readiness, right? Where it's like society had to go through what they call the Enlightenment filter in order to develop and reach the Industrial Revolution, right? We had to let go of some of our own barbaric practices or whatever it may be. And quite frankly, it's like, for example, electricity. I think that electricity has been discovered and harnessed bazillions of times throughout history. But the reason why it never really took off until the modern era is because it would have been a weapon that destroyed humanity if people got, like, a handle on it. I don't know. That's just what I'm working with. Bear with me. So that's the position of Saturn. Then in the position of Jupiter, I have the Eight of Swords. And the Eight of Swords is like somebody that's being... I'm seeing, if you know like the story of Ariadne and the thread that like Ariadne was like the spider goddess or whatever that goes into the labyrinth with a thread so that she can find her way out, right? It's like, this is giving me the energy of Ariadne's thread that's kind of pulling us out of the labyrinth of belief systems, right? So Jupiter to me in this spread corresponds to belief systems and identities that are built on belief systems. I think the most problematic belief system right now for everybody, regardless of what you believe, is going to be most likely politics, right? It's like politics is the new religion in terms of it being a cult that you have to kind of go along with, regardless of, again, what party you're in, right? But with this Ariadne's thread, it's like, it's almost like nobody really needs to be pushed out of their parties right now because the parties are doing a great job of that themselves, right? Where it's like, I live in one of the most liberal places that I can imagine. Everyone I know is just so disgusted with the Democrats, right? And it's like everything I see online, it seems like the Republicans are quite disgusted with the Republicans, right? So it's like something good is happening where it's like something about the energy of this is amplifying the cringe, I think, because it's like a gentle kind of thing where it's like, oh, let me just like back out of the room. Like this is getting weird. This is not what I kind of thought it was. So we're just gonna tiptoe out, but it's also being led into the wilderness, right? Because it's like something about the Eight of Swords of it all, the way that she's blindfolded, the way that she's kind of tiptoeing. It's like trying not to set off the alarms of the ego, where like everything is becoming a joke so that it's very easy to emotionally detach from it. And that's why things have become so comically absurd everywhere, right? Because it's a different kind of energy in terms of the release, because it's, I don't know. There's something about the humor of it all where it's like, it's still frustrating, but like, it's absurd, right? And that, I think you can get what I'm saying. In the position of Mars, we have the Ace of Cups. So the Ace of Cups is going to be like a brand new sense of purpose based on identity, right? So it's like as we're being kind of lured out of the identity labyrinth and the belief system labyrinth by Ariadne's thread, it's like this new sense of purpose and directive is coming in, right? Because Mars talks to me about purpose and directive. It's what you plug into the GPS. And with the Ace of Cups, it's like that is brand new identity, right? So again, ace, 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 just incredible energy. And then the card of the sun is the Ace of Swords, right? So those are my three aces on the table: wands, cups, and swords. And so that would imply it's like Saturn gets a hard reboot. Saturn is currently retrograde. Mars gets a hard reboot. Mars seemed to be the closest passage, so that's really interesting. And then the sun also getting a hard reboot, showing up at the bottom of the deck. Oh my god, like I was saying with the Matrix movie, right? That was a hard reboot of the sun, which is so interesting, right? The solar crucifixion or whatever. What the heck am I even talking about? And then the Ace of Swords rebooting the sun, right? So the Ace of Swords talks to me about the terms and conditions, right? It's like the sword to me is the pen that writes the script that manifests this reality, right? The person that holds the sword is the author that has authority over this narrative, right? And for all intents and purposes, it seems like every belief system seems to imply that the sun, at least in terms of celestial players, would be the one that's holding the sword, right? In terms of scripting this reality, going back to what I was saying about being the projector, right? So it's like getting a new script. And then that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about not being able to or excuse me, that the Ace of Pentacles was the only thing that was not on the table, and that script is being refined, right? So all of this is encouraging us to refine the script, and it's like with a new Ace of Cups comes a new I am, right? So that's a new script in and of itself. You're changing the words that you use to describe yourself, or you use to describe your purpose or your reality or whatever it is. And with the Ace of Wands, it's a new set of terms and conditions in terms of what you believe is possible and what you believe is within reach and yada, yada, yada. Because like I was saying, it's like just about anything is possible with Saturn, right? It's like we haven't figured out 0 point energy, gravity, propulsion yet, but it is possible within the laws of Saturn. We just have to get there, right? So it's almost like, you know, something within your reality that seemed as fantastical as that, right? 0 point energy, gravity, propulsion is now possible. And what I'm saying is, like, poetically in your own life, whatever that thing is that you wanted to accomplish that seemed just as far out as Star Trek technology, right? It's like your goal, your dream might have seemed just as far out, but perhaps now that's changing where you're realizing that it actually is within reach and possible. What's really fascinating, so what's coming up next in the position of Venus, which talks to me about Venus is like all of the tangible aspects of our reality, right? So it's like taste, touch, smell, etc. Those preferences are Venus. So if Mars is what we're plugging into the prime directive, right? Mars is the hunger. Venus is specifically what we're hungry for based on our tastes, right? So I'm in the mood for pizza because I like pizza, right? So it's like if I had no taste for pizza, I would not be hungry for that, right? So that's where like Mars and Venus come together. But Venus is being hit with a hard death card, full reboot. How interesting. And what I have to pull the next card on the table. In the Mercury position, I have the Page of Wands. And the Page of Wands is like somebody that's finally able to articulate the vision, right? All of these other aces are falling into place, and it's like finally having the language to describe what you truly desire, which would imply that like these other things that were kind of clouding our desires, because Venus, it's like the shadow side of Venus can be, you know, things that are artificially flavored and coated in perfumes and glamour spells and things like that that are more so driven by maybe like lust versus true passion, right? It's like that is the thing that I think is getting hit by the death card and being or allowing for this Page of Wands to finally articulate what we desire, right? Because I feel like I've said this so many times in readings where it's like, I think we can all clearly articulate what we don't want, but we have trouble tuning into what we do want. And I think we can all clearly articulate who we think that we're not, but we might have a lot of trouble articulating who we think we are, right? So it's like that is the thing that's being rebooted. And so the reason why I wanted to jump to this Page of Wands in the Mercury position, which talks again about communication and values and things like that, is because when this death card hit the table in the Venus position, what I saw was the scene in the Dune movies where Timothée Chalamet's character has like successfully captured Dune, and he's in the throne room with the Emperor, Christopher Walken, and all of the other characters, and like the High Priestess of the Bene Gesserit, right? And he says to all of them, he's like, this is who I am. I'm the son of Leto Atreides, Duke of Arrakis, this, that, and the third. And what he says to them is, no, he doesn't say it to them. He says it to his chief commander. He says, Chief Commander, let all of the other houses know that if anybody F's with us, we will use our atomics to blow all of the spice fields into oblivion, right? So the spice is what they're all fighting for, right? And he's like, it ain't about spice for me. He's like, I will blow this house down. And of course, everybody says, oh, you're bluffing. Christopher Walken says, you're bluffing, you're mad, whatever. And then the Bene Gesserit High Priest, right, which I feel like is this Venus energy that's kind of been telling us what we want as opposed to allowing us to listen to what we truly want. She says, be careful what you're about to do, Paul Atreides. And then he uses the voice on her and he goes, silence! And everybody in the room gags, right? Because it's like, oh, did he just use the voice on the witch? Like the one girl who's supposed to be the only one that can use the voice, right? So it's like, this is the ability to use the voice on the witch. And I think her next line is she's just like shook and she's like, oh, abomination, where it's like, yeah. And there's that, I think, is the energy that's stepping up, which is like the same thing as like Neo stepping into his power, right? But it's like that whole thing happens on the other side of like Smith thinking that he got the best of him, right? So it's like, I don't think any of that's happening in the future. I think we've already had plenty of moments where Smith thinks that he got the best of us, right? But like, the construct is getting put in its place. I don't know what else to say. The construct is getting put in its place. And what's coming up next with the moon card, in the position of the moon, excuse me, is the 10 of Cups, right? And I'm pretty sure the 10 of Cups was in this position in the last reading. And it's going back to exactly what I was saying about the Ace of Pentacles in the beginning, where it's like recalibrating your idea of paradise, recalibrating your idea of happy ever after, recalibrating your idea of new earth, really, really going in there, because now you finally have a clear sense of not just what you don't want, but what you do want, right? And you are finally, because it's like the conversation that's happening between Paul Atreides and the witch, that's happening in here, right? That's not an external conversation. We're not having it with the Bene Gesserit in our reality. That's not happening. It's all in here, right? Mother Jessica lives in here, and she tells you, be careful before you get so full of yourself, right? That's the voice in here. And then our inner Paul Atreides is telling that thing in the back of our head to shut the F up and sit the F down. And I don't think it's ever really had the ability to do that before, right? Because it's, Mother Jessica was good. She was good at what she did, but her time is up. And shout out to all the Jessicas out there. I know it's unfortunate to have certain names these days. Karen, right? I feel bad for anybody named Karen. But either which way, your inner Paul Atreides is activated, right? Or activating as a result of this 3i Atlas. Now, it's funny that I'm bringing up the Dune of it all, because I think that Dune is a great analogy for what's happening right now with 3i Atlas. Because my number one question is this real or is this bullshit? And then my number two question is anything real or is everything bullshit? Now, with the Dune movies, the Bene Gesserit, the witches, spent 10,000 years seeding all of these BS prophecies throughout the galaxy, right? So they gave the Fremen, the blue-eyed people, the prophecy of the Moadib, or whatever it was that they called him, I forget. Lisan al-Gaib, there we go. I'm good at my Fremen. But that was a false prophecy that was seeded to basically mind control people into doing what they wanted them to do, right? It was a manipulation tactic. So it implies that all of these religions, that all of the different planets and peoples were given were false just for the sake of controlling them. Surprise, right? Radical concept. What happens in the Dune movies is that one of their false prophecies bites them in the ass, right? Because the prophecy that they gave to the Fremen about their liberation and yada, 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 and the fall of the Empire comes true through Paul Atreides, right? And the moment that Paul Atreides hits Mother Jessica with the voice is the moment where she knows it all just backfired, right? That is effectively what's happening right now, I think, throughout the construct, right? The proverbial Mother Jessica realizes that the cat's out of the bag, right? The thought form that they released has now grown bigger than anything that they can control. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think the same thing is happening with 3i Atlas. All signs point to PSYOP, right? I mean, just a couple of days after Trump says we should look into Harvard for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and all of that, it's like Avi Loeb from Harvard comes out and says that the hostile mothership is on its way and it's going to land about a week before the Clintons have to testify. You know what I'm saying? It's just like something about that smells fishy to me. But energy flows where attention goes. Whatever narrative they were trying to seed, their false prophecy, it didn't stick. Because I remember this, I don't know if you guys remember this, but in the beginning, back in like early July when this thing first hit the airwaves, he referred to it, Avi Loeb referred to it as a hostile mothership. All of the articles use the word hostile. You don't see that anymore. One thing that I have noticed about this 3i Atlas thing is that it's like, I take my notes, right? I remember all these weird little things that happen. The Mandela effects around this thing are crazy. And somebody had told me recently that they had watched some video where basically it seemed like 3i Atlas was responding to what people were saying about it, right? Where they would say it's doing this and then it would like shift its behavior or whatever. And again, who knows what's real and what's true, because I can't see it, you can't see it. I have to trust, everybody else that says that they can see it. But we can't see any of these things that we engage with in our reality, and we know that they're there. All of these thought forms, right? And that goes back to the ancient concept of the gods, right? Whether it was Zeus, Jupiter, Osiris, you name it, all of these different entities, it's like these were thought forms. And the thought form was pinned to the celestial body, right? Where we're going to associate that with this. But the thought form was man-made, right? And I think the reason why it was so politically expedient for the ancients to merge gods is because they understood the power of that thought form, right? So it's like, oh, if we can merge Zeus and Osiris and create like Super Zeus Osiris, then now we have an even more powerful thought form to work with, right? But it doesn't mean that it's real. It's man-made, but it is still having an effect, right? It's like nothing about the Twinkie or the Snickers that I ate is real, but it's still having the effect, right? It's something like that. It's like these artificial thought forms that have gotten out of control. It's like that's an aspect of what I think 3i Atlas is moving through and dismantling, right? Because it's like even behind the religions, the political institutions, fame, all of these different aspects of reality, it's like they have thought forms or designated deities or tulpas or egregores behind them, right? And those are the things that I think are being cleaned up and dismantled. And that's it. It's like throughout history, I think that many different civilizations actively created thought forms for warfare purposes, right? So that's why I always get nervous about playing with these things. And I always say, like, particularly like the Norse gods, right? It's like, whew, those things were designed and created to be brutal and psychopathic, right? So it's just like, be careful before you play with any of these technologies, right? Because that's really what it is. But the Page of Wands is kind of like the individual that creates the thought form, right? Because he's speaking something into existence. And with the way that he's holding his staff, there's a very Gandalf-y kind of energy around it, right? And I was talking about the power of the voice, and even in that scene in The Lord of the Rings where Gandalf makes that declaration, it seems like it's the power of his voice, right? And the power of intent, and how the voice really is the thresholds between the astral plane and the physical world, right? Because it's like I have this thought, and then I vibrate my vocal cords in order to make a sound that then bounces out into reality, right? And it's like whatever that does, it's like I don't think we really know the full extent of what that does, but like we're getting there. I think we're getting to the point where we might soon know. And what's interesting, what's coming up, so in the position of Uranus, which talks to me about the boundary of the imagination, and for the record, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, I do not think should be included in astrology. I think that those were added during the reset. They are fake planets. They ascribe to the matrix, right? It's like those are matrix variables exclusively that we should not be working with. They're false, fake, yada, yada. I just want to clarify that. That's what I believe. If you don't believe it, that's fine. We can all live. But Uranus. Uranus to me represents the boundary of the imagination, right? Uranus used to be the firmament itself. That was basically the name of the firmament was Uranus. And with the Eight of Cups, moving beyond this structure into the unknown. It's like finally piercing the boundary of the imagination, right? Whatever kind of Faraday cage or cap was put on top of potential, right? Like the limit of our potential, that seems to be with the Eight of Cups, right? It's like we're finally kind of moving beyond that. And I just want to add up my math again because I love to do that. 6, 17, 29, 17 again, okay. 29 and 11, okay. And so when I add up the math through my spread, I have the number 11 pop up more than any other number, and that corresponds to the Justice card, which was also right next to these 3 cards that I pulled in the beginning where the Ace of Pentacles was. And the Justice card right now, to me, talks about like a corrective kind of energy, right? Where it's almost like, if you can think about a judge trying to figure out what belongs to who, right? Who does this property actually belong to? What does this idea actually belong to? Who's responsible here, right? Like that kind of energy, trying to sort and sift and place people where they belong, right? And it's like the Knight of Wands being in the Neptune position is interesting to me, because Neptune to me, at least within the context of this spread, it's like how we see ourselves subconsciously, but it's like the illusion or shadow aspect of self in terms of what we're seeing, right? Because Neptune to me is the planet that's like the closest planet to Satan in terms of the astrological chart, because it's illusion, delusion, piracy, all of the horrible things that come with piracy. He's the Jeffrey Epstein of the skies, right? That's Neptune, right? Just absolute bad news. And this Knight of Wands, I feel like, is coming out of that Neptune energy, right? Because Neptune, it's not just a water planet, it's like cold, dark, deep water, right? It's like the reason why Neptune and Pluto get along so much is because they kind of govern the same spaces, where it's like Neptune is not just water, it's the deep sea, right? The depths of the sea that we ourselves cannot even reach, right? And the Knight of Wands is passion. Like it really just is the energy of passion. And like when I think about it, it's like a trend for, I don't know, like at least the last 10 years that I've been paying attention to, is seeing so many people that I know that I'm surrounded by that are so passionate, that do have such tremendous vision, but there's just this energetic weight of sludge that's like, that had been on top of them, myself included. Oh, and that's so funny. As I was saying that, I just saw like a garbage bag like fly through the sky that got caught by the wind, right? Do you ever feel like a plastic bag drifting through the wind, right? Quite literally. And because it's like that cold, wet, dark energy was sitting on top of this proverbial fire, but also creating kind of like an aimless energy, right? Because it's like, that is the trouble with the Knight of Wands, is that it can be very spontaneous to the point where it doesn't really think things through all the way, and then could potentially make a mistake, right? It might rush into something. But, you know, that might be the shadow side, but then the light side would just be about motivation, determination, like I feel the feeling and I wanna act upon it immediately, right? Because I'm almost seeing it as like, you know, when like you go to start a grill, it makes that click, click, click noise for the gas, right? And sometimes it just doesn't catch, and you're going like click, 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 but there's no flame igniting, right? It's like, I feel like that was the energy, right? But now it's almost like by piercing the boundary of Uranus, by piercing the boundary of the imagination, it's like oxygen can finally reach this flame and ignite it. I think that's the best way to describe it. And in the position of Pluto, which sits beneath Venus in my chart. So Pluto would talk to me about those subconscious either traumas or programs or beliefs or something very deep rooted in like the id level, primal level of the consciousness that does influence our desires. So it can show up as toxic interests or addictions or anything like that, or just anything that kind of confuses our sense of self in general. That is coming up right now as the Two of Swords. And I'm like, let me do my math again, sorry. That was 11, okay, oh wow, yeah, 13. So it comes up as Death card energy right beneath the Death card, which is so funny. And the way that I was seeing this Two of Swords is like a closed loop kind of thing. If you ever saw the first season of American Horror Story, The Murder House, the idea is that if you died inside of this house, you would be stuck in the house forever. So if you tried to go out the front door, you would just come right back in through the back door, right? You could never actually exit the property. And it's like that is effectively somehow tied up in Pluto. Why would that make sense? I mean, Pluto in general is typically something that represents hidden things. And especially in like the modern age, I always associate it with data, right? How they say that they're collecting and hiding all of our data. And it often makes me think about the TV show Westworld, which was all about AI and things like that, that in one of the seasons, they were no longer in the theme park. Now they were in the real world. And there was this AI algorithm that was controlling all of humanity, but humanity had no idea. They had no idea that this algorithm was controlling them. And it would dictate everything, like who they would wind up marrying, what job they would have, how much money they would be allowed to have, how long they would live, when they would die. And it was like this algorithm was somehow capable of managing all of that. And at some point in the Westworld TV show, that file gets sent to everybody, right? So everybody gets like an email notification, they open it, and it's like, there's your algorithm. And it shows you everything that's been done to you and then everything that's planned for you. And the other theme of that season of the show was that, you know, everybody was being kept in this loop, right? So they were being kept in the closed loop, in the labyrinth. And the AI was able to detect divergences. That's what it referred to it as. Anybody that broke out of their loop would be called a divergent. And one of the craziest aspects of it was that there was a character on the show who considered himself to be a divergent, right? He thought that he was unplugged, that he was working against the system. And there was this like black market deep web app where you could do like criminal tasks in exchange for cryptocurrency, like an untraceable cryptocurrency. So he would basically be like a murder for hire hitman that would receive tasks through this app and play them out for cryptocurrency, thinking that he was a divergent. Later on in the episode or in the season, he finds out that this app was controlled by the system itself, and the hits were being placed on true divergence, right? So he was still being controlled by the mechanism, and he was only assassinating people who had broken out of their loop, right? So that, I'm just sharing all of that. That was the plot of Westworld. So basically what I'm seeing in all of this is that it's like, I think we are in the process of finding out how the loop actually works. And quite frankly, I think there's something about that in the Epstein files. Like, yes, there's all of these other horrible things that had to do with children and yada, 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 but it's like his involvement with AI is probably, I don't know, it's all equally frightening, right? But his proximity to Peter Thiel, the reptile, the fact that Les Wexner recently went on record saying that he wants to make Columbus, Ohio, the data mining and processing hub of the future, right? So they're trying to collect data. Jeffrey Epstein, after he was released from jail the first time, he opened this company called Southern Trust, which looked like a bank, but the only thing that they were banking was genetic data, right? And then that goes back to his weird relationship with Harvard and all of their science programs and his eugenics experiments and my belief that if you were trying to create an algorithm like the Westworld TV show that controlled mankind at that level, I think you would need three types of data. You would need internet user data, all of it. You would need genetic data, as much as as you could possibly get. And you would need astrological data. So that's why I think they collect all of our data for free on the internet. They give us all of these things to play with for free. How much genetic data has been collected, 23andMe, Ancestry.com, right? You paid them to collect your data, literally. And then, of course, 2020, how much genetic data did they collect then, right? Where did all of those swabs go? Where did we send them? I have no idea. You don't know, right? They went somewhere. There's so much more to that rabbit hole. And then astrological data, right? Everybody and their mother has done a free astrological quiz with the exact birth time and all of that at some point, right? So that's the triangulation, I believe. If you had all three of those things, you could theoretically build the algorithm. And the question is, have they built it already, or are they trying to build it? And like I said, I think something like that is going to be revealed at some point in the near future, and that's what's going to truly break the algorithm once and for all, right? Because I think there are a lot of divergences, right? I think, quite frankly, all of us would be considered divergence, true divergence, right? That have successfully broken out of things. But I also think that there's a blessing and a curse that comes from that, because it's like, yes, you get to kind of hide yourself and shield yourself from the all-seeing eye of the Matrix, but then you become like a ghost in the machine without your own timeline. You have a lot of trouble manifesting things because you're not really, it's like you're in it, not of it, over it, not in it, right? Like you're unplugged in that kind of way. So I don't know, that's just coming through as something that I think a lot of us have experienced in the last couple of years. But I'm losing the plot. I want to go back in here. So I have, well, I just want, so above, what's so interesting? So above this Two of Swords, which is the closed loop, and the Death card, which is the voice being used against the Bene Gesserit, against the false prophecy. Above that, I have the Five of Wands in the position of basically like what our guardian angels are doing right now, or how they're trying to inspire us. That's kind of like the best way to say it. Like, it's above the Venus, right? So it's coming through as something that's trying to capture our attention and appeal to our senses. And the Five of Wands is an energy of chaos. And when this card hit the table, I saw it as like a pack of like funny little monkeys that are going around and just creating chaos for the sake of breaking us out of this, right? Where it's like almost like the Clockwork Elves or something like that, because I don't really trust the Clockwork Elves. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's something like that where it's very gestury and clownish, but it's like the divine gesture, I guess, is the best way to say it. I think that's a thing. I don't know. I'm a bit clownish, right? So I guess there has to be like a divine gesture aspect, right? But this is like, it's like, it looks like they're fighting, it looks like chaos, but it's like I feel like they're playing, right? Where it's like almost like a flash mob kind of energy, but it breaks up the algorithm, right? Like, imagine if you were in like a busy shopping mall, a very matrixy kind of shopping mall where everybody's on their loop and everybody's under the hypnosis of needing to consume, eat, and obey, and all of that other kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden a flash mob breaks out, right? And somebody starts, doing a little shimmy and shake, and then another girl jumps out, and then she's singing, and then somebody's up here dressed like a Santa Claus or something, you know what I mean? It's just like wild shit that just breaks you out of your hypnosis, right? Because it's like so random and unserious and chaotic. It's something like that, where it's like, it's almost like Spirit's plan right now is, we would assume from our perspective that it's like this very serious kind of operation of like what we're going to do. But it's almost like, remember the TV show Punked back in the day with Ashton Kutcher, right, where they would prank all of those different celebrities? It's like, before they got to the TV show, right, I'm sure that they would have a meeting at the beginning of each season where they would pitch the ideas to each other, right? Okay, so pitching the ideas, right? Pitching the ideas to each other, like I was saying in the beginning, and refining that pitch. But it's almost like they would sit down and they would say, how do we get so and so? Right? And it was all in good faith. It was all in good humor. I don't know anything about those characters or that show. Maybe it wasn't in good faith, but let's just pretend it was for the sake of this analogy. It's like, that's what I feel like Spirit is doing right now, where they're like, how do we break everybody out of the loop, but in like a funny way? Like, wasn't I saying that before? Yeah, with the belief systems and being pulled out of the belief systems by Ariadne's thread, but in like the gentlest, most humor-driven way possible. Because it's like, we're not trying to amplify the energy of rage or fury or any of that. We're actually, it's almost like the only way to deactivate these thought forms that have been inflated over the years, like I was saying, the gods and the parties and the religions and the systems. It's like ignoring them is one thing, but laughing at them, ooh, laughing at them is the silver bullet. I think that's it. I think that's it. Because again, what you resist persists. And I always think of like Aleister Crowley, right? Like Aleister Crowley is the one that put the idea that he's the wickedest man in the world. It's like he told the media to refer to himself as that. He told the media to refer to him as the Great Beast 666. And I think it's because he had this understanding that somehow being feared would actually empower him. And there are so many pictures online. Do your own Google search for yourself, but it's like Trump and Aleister Crowley could be twins. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if we're time traveling. I don't know what kind of cosmic giggle is happening there. But it's like he understands that same kind of sorcery, where he loves to be hated because it empowers whatever it is that he's doing. I don't know how it works, but somehow it works. What he does not like is to be laughed at. He can be criticized, right? He'll push back. He loves to fight. It's all whatever. But to laugh at him, whew, any of these politicians, right? Because they're gladiators, right? They love bloodshed and violence and hatred. But if the gladiator gets out and everybody just starts laughing at him, whew, he's not even going to notice that the lion is roaring right behind him, right? Going in for the kill. Because the gladiator's going to be like, why is everybody, is my kilt on a little awkward? What you resist persists, but what you dismiss gets dismissed? I don't know. We're going to have to work on that analogy. My inner Dr. Seuss is not working right now. The divine Dr. Seuss, right? So, hi, Dios mío. Is there anything else I need to say about that? I've scrambled all of my cards, so now I don't even know. Three-Eye Atlas and the false prophecy, right? Even if there is no Three-Eye Atlas, the thought form has been hijacked by the light workers in such a way that it is undoing everything that they have built in terms of like the Bene Gesserit, right? The false prophecies that have been spread for bazillions of years throughout this matrix, right? And think about it. It's like every prophecy ends the same way, with the Hunger Games and the destruction of one particular nation that for whatever reason has to be destroyed and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, because that's part of the script. So of course they're doing everything within their power to make you hate that thing. So I'll say that much. Don't hate that thing. Don't hate the thing. It's very easy right now to hate the thing. We're normalizing the hatred of the thing, right? And we all know what the thing is, right? The thing that has to get destroyed at the end according to all of the prophecies that are false, right? We are not reading from their book. Forget their book. Throw the book out. Laugh at the book. Laugh at it. Because we're not going to get the nuclear annihilation that everybody wants, right? Not on my timeline. I don't require that because it's just fiction, right? It's TV. We're turning that off. But just be mindful of that, right? That it's like sometimes we think we think that we are a divergent, right? But it is actually the system itself using us as a pawn in a very radical and nuanced kind of way, right? And the hatred that's going towards the one particular place right now is a part of the script, and it always has been. And that's why they're making it so easy to hate. I think Epstein has a lot to do with that. Don't fall for it. We're not playing the Hunger Games, right? We're not going to pick which group of millions of people deserves to be annihilated, right? How about no Hunger Games? How about President Snow is the one that gets taken off stage, right? Not any kind of real president, but it's time to retire. It's time for all politicians to retire because they're clowns. I'm just going on a rant, right? See, when I go on these kinds of rants, that's when I don't upload the video, so I'm just gonna keep it where it is. Love to everybody, right? Another great example, I've said how many times on this channel in so many readings, it's like I need to do a compilation video where I say there's gonna be this moment where the politicians flip and everybody surprises us, and don't just write somebody off as the bad guy or the enemy just because the system and the script wants you to. Because there's pivots that are going to happen, and plot twists and surprises. And the Marjorie Taylor Greene of it all is the craziest thing that I have seen in a while. I can't even count the number of times, even my mother said, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, she was the most hardcore, farthest left or farthest right MAGA person that there was. And now she's the one that's going on TV saying we need to stop the hatred and all of these other things, right? It's just like, it's breaking the matrix. It is breaking the matrix. And I am so open to every other a-hole on TV right now doing the same thing. I love that concept. I love the concept of everybody waking up one day and doing the right thing. And that's my prophecy. My prophecy is that one day everybody wakes up and does the right thing. Not the dusty old book that was written by a bunch of LARPers and fangirls 3,000 years ago. No, thank you. I am going to write my own prophecy and make the Bene Gesserit eat their words, okay? And I think that's pretty much that on that. I love you guys. Again, if you're interested in a private reading, I'm still out here on these streets, so book me, like I said, before 3i Atlas picks me up and takes me back home to the mothership, because I'm ready, y'all. I am so ready. But if the mothership comes here, I'm at peace with that too. I'm at peace with Earth becoming a paradise, right? I guess that's another thing that I'll leave it on. Please check your nihilism at the door, right? Because I've been there. Trust and believe, nobody wanted the world to end more than me for most of my life. And I'm grateful that I have moved past that particular experience. And I have to thank 2020 for that, because leading up to March of 2020, I prayed for the end of the world every single day. And then when it came, I was like, oh no. Did I actually want this? I don't know if I actually want this. And, you know, as they dangled the martial law and the collapse of society in our face, it really made me kind of check whether or not I was interested in that timeline. And now I would much prefer a reality where things improve, because I do have hope and faith that things can improve. And like I said, the Marjorie Taylor Greene of it all. Let everybody surprise you, because they can. If we designate them as enemies and adversaries and evil and yada, 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 then it empowers them, right? That was the Crowley thing. It's like, if you empower somebody as they're evil and they're going to take over the world, it's like, that's an affirmation. They are going to destroy the world is an affirmation. Let's not affirm that. I'm not affirming that on anybody. They are Satan incarnate is an affirmation. It's just like allowing that thing to possess them, right? So it's like, no, thank you. I'm not co-signing on that. They are something that could be laughed at. Okay, let's find the jokes. But, you know, let's keep the jokes as friendly as possible, right? So I love you guys. I'll leave it there, and I'll see you soon. Bye, y'all.